because we talk about agriculture, farming, cassava farming in Nigeria, and we understand the many challenges that we face. But to see you do it and do, almost as if it breathes a walk in the park is something to be commended. Thank you very much for sharing with us this afternoon. Talking about funding, we talk about bringing the farmers together to share with them, part of what you share with them are the funding opportunities available to them. And as I mentioned earlier on, I have on this platform to give our next paper, to present our next paper from the Bank of Industry. As we all know, it's a BOI. Mr. Kaide Piton is the Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of the Bank of Industry. Now, corporate and banking experience spanning over 25 years. Unfortunately, he had to attend to very pressing matters. However, he has sent in a strong representative to present his paper in the person of Mrs. Lolo Cassava, who is the Deputy General Manager for Large Enterprises at the Bank of Industry. I have Mrs. Lolo Cassava here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
you. Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. May I ask please, Mrs. Cassava, to kindly enable your video? I requested for that, please.
Pardon?
May I ask that you kindly enable your video? Thank you. Thank you very
much. Okay. I wanted to be behind the scene. It's okay, but thank you very much, Ayo. It's a pleasure to be here to talk with professionals in the chosen sector. I'd like to acknowledge my director forever, Dr. Nikki Akande, who incidentally was one of our directors of the Bank of Industry. Thank you, ma'am. My friends in the house, I tried to reach you yesterday. It's a pleasure seeing you here again, and Professor Sani. Thank you so much. This is a short presentation, but I'd like to speak just to the paper and the fact that we all know what finance also represents. May I have the next page? Okay. I don't want to dwell so much on the challenges which everybody has been alluded to in the presentations that we have had, but permit me just to go straight to what the finance is all about and why people feel or have access to funding. Basically, for want of time, sustainable funding, it's the criteria set for every finance institution. And in the food sector, we all know that for us to look at what will qualify somebody for funding, we look at the fact that it's contributing to food security, which cassava has all the immense potentials to also to provide. The fact that you have the capacity to transfer skills and technologies. I was so glad listening to my sister of all the things they've done, training and skills transfer and making people happy, putting smiles on their faces. And then we'll also look at technologies that adapt to standardizations and provisions for maximum impact. Because for us, when you're looking at Dr. Okechukwu talked extensively about the technologies that are also available. And then we want to foster inclusion in the funding gap. We want to comply with highest and most sustainable environmental and social practices in funds delivery. And then companies that also comply with the highest regulatory standards, no violations in terms of taxes, in terms of environmental protections and stuff like that. And then most importantly, we also want to see companies that foster Avara contributions and collaborations, especially with development partners, money deposits banks, development banks, and maybe research institutes, and so on. That said, next slide. For us, probably I will generalize. This is what happens. Maybe we separate our funding mix. First is the primary production, which has to do with the farmers. It's not a Bank of Industry presentation, but for me, I would want to strictly stick to our areas of core competencies in Bank of Industry, where we intervene in the processing arm of transferring the primary produced commodities to enable them get to the tables. This it's what is obtainable now in Nigeria. Next slide. These are some of maybe the information that we already have known to us, but suffice to mention that when the Presidential Initiative of Cassava started in 2002, Bank of Industry actively participated in that initiative in collaborating with government. I also want to say that for us in financing, we also want to align our initiatives and processes to delivering the NRP as well as the economic growth plan of the federal government. So collectively, we work to push the federal government's agenda while also looking at sustainability and growth. So again, that side, next slide. These are things we already know are major challenges of the industry. My sister also alluded to all this: poor transportation, inadequate markets, storage facilities. So then where do we actually pinch our tent as Bank of Industry or as a finance development provider? So our choice is, why then Cassava? Because we're talking about a particular product now. Before we do a transaction, we look at the product identification, which is very key to us. For Cassava, we have identified that it has a capacity to replace about 200,000 metric liters, of cassava flour, which my sister also produces. It also has capacity to substitute maize in poultry. So the value chain has to be quite wide and quite long and quite impressive also. Be more widely consumed as a healthy staple crop. When they expand the consumer market development capacity, does it have the capacity also? It has the capacity to enhance processing and commercialization also, and then increase the farm production and raw material supply base. We have also identified cassava has about $91 million production capacity on year to year, and then for industrial uses. About 300 and 400 million US dollars investment in addition to processing plants and plant capacities. So ability also for us to also save about 271 million US dollars on imports. So therefore, for us, we feel that this is a commodity that has all the immense potentials to attract funding. But in BOI or in finance institutions, mostly they look at eligibility criteria. And those eligibility criteria is that the market fundamentals has to be right, bottom to up. Bottom to up in the sense that you have the market already. A lot of times people go into the industry or go into a sector and then the market is not there and they come back to say, oh, okay, I should have done what I need to do rightly from the beginning. We look at the promoters' experiences and then the track records in the chosen industry, especially in the cassava, where we know the value chain is quite impressive. We look at the financial strength. Does the person also have the equity to be able to contribute? Because you got to have your skin in the game in looking for a third-party financing. Technical feasibility, are the technologies that you are also wanting to deploy, are they right for the chosen commodity that you want to also process? Simple things are bookkeeping. Simple things are audited accounts, registered companies. Again, we look at employment generation capacities and gender inclusion and then again, we look at local content, economy scale, and impact, social impact. And largely, we look at the macroeconomic resiliences for the transactions. So what do we actually do? Next slide. What do we do is to streamline our lending to three basic areas. First, we do term loans, which are about between 5 to 7 years, most times inclusive of maximum 2 years moratorium, or as the case may be, depending on the nature of the equipment that you want to buy. And then again, this also depends on the technology, that how long it's going to take to import and also install. We look at, in looking at the finances, we streamline from MSMEs, micro, SMEs, medium, and also the large corporates. For the large corporates, let me talk a bit about the large corporates. For the large corporates, we look at areas where there are linkages and synergies between the SMEs. When everybody was doing did a presentation, they did mention that, okay, they have linkages to almost all the large corporates that Cassava derivatives can feed into. Mentions were Unilever, Nestle, probably other companies like maybe Promasido and the likes. So from the SME, we develop the base. We may not, in Bank of Industry, our mandate is not to do primary production, but since we had a challenge with Bank of Agriculture, we have a product in Bank of Industry for agri mechanization, so that for tractor hiring and the likes. So those ones, they take the raw materials straight to the industries that are being processed, and then we finance those SMEs. But particularly, we link those SMEs also to the large corporates so that they can also feed the large corporates. Partly is that jobs are guaranteed, loan repayment is also secured. Our next strategy is to look at sustainable and uptake of cassava arrangements that are in place as applicable in this transaction or in this commodity that we're looking at. For the large corporates, in the last, in the last few years, suffice to mention that Bank of Industry has done about 180 billion to the agri sector with cassava, starch, chips, taking over maybe about 50, from Gary to starch processing to chips, taking a chunk of that resources. Of late, we've diversified our portfolio to doing ethanol. Ethanol, it's a product that we have invested heavily in because of the high capacity of ethanol to consume so much of cassava tubers. Because Nigeria spends about 60 billion annually in importing ethanol. And we know the derivatives, we know how applicable ethanol is to the versatile industries that we have across the country. So therefore, next slide, please. So we provide working capital facilities for 3 years. Ours is not like 1 year payback and then you will get. It's what we call the structured working capital. It sits with the company for a period of 3 years, and then after 3 years, repayments are made, not in lump sum, but repayments are made as per the cycle of the commodity. Sometimes maybe monthly, if it is in the processing of a commodity that we know that you can pay on monthly basis, or quarterly, as in the case of cassava or cocoa. So every quarter is expected, you're expected to pay the loans back. From history, I know that Even the commercial banks, impressive disbursement have been made of about 88%. A lot of collaborations have also been made with CBN and CACs and co-borrowers programs in driving the Cassava initiatives. All the finance institutions see the Cassava as one product that we cannot do away with. The world is looking at feeding about more than 9 billion people in the next few years. By 2020, that's the projection, and many of them will be fed in Africa. So we know the importance. Processors, at the last count, got about 97.5% of our lending. Fabricators got about 67% of our lending. And the marketers also got about 79.4% of the lending. So collectively, with lots of collaborations, I'm sure we're doing the much that the Bank of Industry has done. In response to the COVID-19, which has put a lot of strain on our food sector, a lot of incentives are available, like interest rate has been as low as 5% in some cases for the agri sector. Before, maybe they were about 10%, it's halved now. Some are about 7%. It depends on the sector that is being driven. We have a lot of incentives for the agri space, and we're driving the sector the much that we can. So basically, what will be the outward of what we are looking for? We'll be looking at the job creation, gender inclusion. We'll be looking at development in terms of taxes. We'll be looking at export markets, foreign exchange savings. These are the things that we look at. We have also identified that in the SME space, the gap of lending is about, if we compute it in dollar terms, about $4 billion. So what are we doing differently? We're innovating as a finance institution as to the collateral issues. We look at clusters, we look at cooperatives, we look at individuals that also have the capacity to provide the needed support. But basically, I think for the Cassava, we are expanding, the bank is expanding, financial institutions are also expanding their base in driving the Cassava initiatives forward. I think on this note, I should stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, ma'am. Really grateful for that, for the insightful information for the Bank of Industry. And again, I'd like to thank Representative Mr. Khaled Davis, who is the Managing Director of the Bank of Industry in Nigeria. I'd like to thank Mrs. Lolo for her presentation. I do believe that you don't have questions from the presentation. I think one of the most critical aspects of Cassava farm implementation. Now, we'll go for our final paper for today. It has been indeed an informative session. It has been a session that is insightful, enlightening in some aspects, and it has been a time well spent. And I'd like to, at this point, thank all our speakers, presenters, panelists this afternoon. We'll have a few minutes to take some questions. Because of our time, we might not be able to take a lot of questions. Just a few, because I know that some of them have come up in the course of the conversation. We'll try to filter as many as possible that can be answered here. So to present for the final session for this afternoon, speaking on machineries for designed industrial utilization of Cassava, the journey so far, I'll be inviting the Acting Director General for the Federal Institute of Industrial Research, situated at Oshun, publicly referred to as FIDO. Our speaker is a core scientist and researcher with years of experience in contributing to the technological advancements of the country. She's a specialist in the area of quality and food safety with a strong passion for human capacity development and purposeful leadership. She holds a doctoral degree in food and industrial microbiology from Nigeria University. Distinguished guests, please make welcome Dr. Agnes Yelisi Cassava, Acting Director General at FIDO.
Hello?
Hello, Dr. Sandra.
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, can you see me? Okay. Yeah. Hello?
Hello.
Hello, ma'am. We can hear you, ma'am. But you muted your mic now. I've just asked for you to mute it so we can hear you. And your video.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, like I've been rightly introduced, Dr. Agnesia Misiasa, the Acting Director General of FIRO, and I'd like to appreciate and thank NEPAD for granting me this opportunity. And I'll be talking a lot on the machineries and things we have in FIRO. So next slide, please. Yes, we all know that Nigeria is the current largest producer of cassava in the world, having about 59 million metric tons per annum. And this accounts for 20.4% of what the whole world is producing. But despite all this, Nigeria is yet to fully embrace what we actually have to render, unlike countries like Thailand, Colombia, and so on. Next slide, please. So cassava, actually, since we are into more of a production, cassava can be processed into primary and secondary products. And we have the primary products like things like fufu, high quality cassava flour, gari, and so on. While we have the secondary products like the pellets, the glucose syrup, that is from these basic primary products, which probably just carry out fermentation, we can now add value to it, and that what makes it even more of a secondary product. And this presentation, I would like to take it talking about the brief on FIRO, the cassava primary products, and the machinery and equipment we have here in the Institute. Next slide, please. So an overview of FIRO is a Federal Institute of Industrial Research, FIRO, and it's a parastatal under the agency of the Federal Ministry of Science and Technology. And this was established by an economic mission that came to Nigeria in 1953 and felt that research in the nation was not properly coordinated, and thereby the Federal Institute of Industrial Research was set up. Next. So what are our vision? Our vision is to be the foremost center of excellence for industrial and development of the nation. And our mission is to conduct market-driven research. What is happening in the market? What is it that we want to do? Nigeria cannot continuously be a third world nation or an undeveloped nation. So what we are all about in FIRO is to bring about the industrialization and economic development of our nation, Nigeria. Next slide, please. What is our broad mandate? Our broad mandate is actually to accelerate industrialization through the utilization of our raw materials. And I make bold to say that of all the raw materials, apart from those that are in the gas and oil industry, FIRO has been able to do one thing or the other to bring about added value to some of our raw materials in the nation. And our mandates, we normally work on food and agro-allied to process them into more relevant and more useful products. And we research into packaging and product design. We are also into research and development into pulp and paper processing. And we are also into the design and fabrication of equipment prototypes. Next, please. So what are we all about? We do the research findings. We have our, you can see Firo there in the middle. And then at the end of it all, we have the machineries and all that we need to make our nation industrialized. Next, please. Next slide, please. So in essence, like I've been talking about, we are into making sure that Nigeria is industrialized. And that is why we have been able to align our mandates with the sustainable development initiatives of the federal government. And one of it is the National Council on Small and Medium Enterprises, which is under the auspices of the Vice President. And then the National School Feeding Program. In this case, we have even been able to have our kind of biscuits. We call it high nutrient density biscuits, which will take part of about 30% of the need of the child that goes to school. So that by the time the child goes to school, has about 30 to 40% of what that child needs, daily required nutrient for that child, is present in this high nutrient density biscuits. And this technology, the patent we have, has even been bought by NASCO, and NASCO is now already producing this biscuit under the name of CHOMP. And then into the National Economic Recovery Growth Plan. We are constantly being of value in this, making sure that the economy is growing by the various research programs that we have. Next slide, please. And we also focus on commercialization of agricultural food products. And if you see from this, 23% of what we actually do is more on the tubers and plantain. Next slide, please. And what are the strategies we focus on? What is it that we do as our own strategies to make sure that we are relevant and that we are contributing to the advancement of the nation? We focus on commercialization of market-ready innovative food products, processes, and equipment. As I go on, you will see more of this. And then we focus on building up a retinue of new products. We're having processing techniques, like we upgrade some local technologies. We have the kunu. Our kunu can now be shelf stable on the table for about a year. We have our palm wine for over a year also. We focus on strengthening institutional capacities. Next slide, please. What are major achievements? In R&D, we have, like I said earlier, we have worked virtually on all raw materials available in Nigeria. We even have this our premium book, 774 technologies for the 774 local governments in Nigeria. And then we have 250 technologies that are market ready, and we have 50 technologies also that are ready for immediate commercialization. I use this opportunity to invite you to Firo to come and pick which technology you would like to further work on. And then we also do product development, foods and beverages, pulp and paper, been able to use kenaf, which when most times we normally get our paper from wood, from trees, but we've been able to use things like kenaf and We have also been able to use it for even for textiles, for paints, for soaps, and for every other part in our engineering. We've been able to do a lot of work on our equipment, which you will see as I go on. Next slide, please. So what are some of our achievements on cassava processing? We have pioneered the research work on upgrading of local technologies on production of cassava-based foods in Nigeria. We have mechanized production of gari, starch, and fufu as far back as the 1960s. Next slide, please. And now, this is an array of some of the work we have done concerning cassava processing. Mechanized gari, we have the soy gari, we have the gari flour, we have cassava chips, we have cassava-based adhesives, we have enriched cassava tapioca, we have high-quality cassava flour, and we have high-quality cassava starch. Next slide, please. As regards gari, I think Professor Sonu mentioned something about this, that it was here in Peru that we had the first plant, but it was patented in the UK, where a UK-based engineering firm, Newell Dunford, was licensed to produce and market the plant. And Nigeria has been able to make a lot of money from this through royalties for this equipment. Next slide, please. And also, the smaller plants are being used to get. We've been able to translate it from the big one to smaller plants, smaller equipment. And this has also been used in about 10 African countries. And some of it has already been exported to Europe and parts of North America. Next slide, please. So here are some of our products. We have our Firo cassava starch, and this is used for pharmaceuticals. And a lot of multinationals, some SMEs have come to acquire this technology in order to be able to use it as additives to some of their process plants in their various plants. Next slide, please. And then we have our premium high quality cassava flour. The aspect of this high quality cassava flour, we've been able to use it in our experiments in reducing the level of flour that we buy, by reintroducing 20% to the flour. In so doing, we have been able to reduce the importation of wheat flour. And we have done a lot of extensive work on this. And also this high cassava flour, we've been able to use it to produce the biggest cake made from cassava flour. And this is recorded in the Guinness Book of Records. That we did this when we had our technology week here in Firo in 2015 or 2012 was when we had this technology week, and the president then came and opened it, being represented by the vice president. And also, we have been able to make confectionaries 100% without inclusion of wheat flour. We've been able to make confectionaries cakes, meat pies, and so on. But our bread, we've been able to make bread like 20% inclusion of cassava flour. And this also has made us to make sure that the glycemic index has been reduced. Next slide, please. That's our Cassie bread. And the journey of bread making started in 1964. Professor Sonny mentioned this in his speech. And then it helps. What are the goodies in having cassava bread? It reduces the importation bills for wheat flour, and then it stimulates the local production of bread and confectionaries by using non-wheat flours. And we, like I said earlier, we have the technology for 20% composite wheat flour. And we have trained over 100 master bakers in the institute. But you ask me, why is it not so popular? Probably because of policy here and there, change of policy on and off has stalled the very noble and novel issue of addition of high quality cassava flour to wheat flour for bread production. Next, please. Now, we've also been able to make noodles. You know, our children love noodles a lot. We've been able to make noodles using cassava. Next slide, please. These are some of our other products that I talked about, the cassava chips and the cassava pellets, which is usually exported a lot to China and to some of these Eastern Europe. And that's the cassava glue, our secondary products. And we have our glucose syrup, which is used in the pharmaceuticals. At the moment, we have a collaboration with a multinational here, a pharmaceutical multinational here in Nigeria. Next slide, please. These are some of the equipment and machineries that we have constructed in Firo. We have the cassava peeler. We know how difficult it is to peel cassava because of the irregularity in shape. But we've been able, the engineers here in Firo have been able to put this into play in the design and construction of this cassava peeler. Now we have our cassava grater to remove the drudgery in cassava processing. Next slide, please. That is our cassava mash manual press. And this is our semi-automatic gari fryer. You can see that. So in so doing, we removed a lot of drudgery in the production of gari, of fufu also. Next slide, please. That's our gari frying station. And that's our mobile gari fryer, which can be taken anywhere for people to be able to fry the gari after you have all those stages of gari production. Next slide, please. So you can see from what I've said so far, from the little I've said so far, talking about our equipment, you can see how the value chain has been improved, how there has been a lot of help to remove drudgery, to remove all wastages, and also to help to bring about quality and safe products so that not the touching and it helps to reduce microbial contamination, which is very key, which is of essence in production of Gari and cassava products in general. That is our cassava chipping machine called the cassava chipper. That's our tapioca roaster. Like I'm sure Erenu and Dr. Akonde were used to taking a lot of mingao, all the mingaos that we can use. So we have been able to make sure that it's not just put by the side of the road to dry the tapioca that we will use for our mingao and for things like that. So we have our tapioca roaster here so that we can get it safe and in good form for processing. Next slide, please. We have a granulator because after drying, it cakes up. So you need to spread it out and make it loose. Then we have our cassava starch wet sifter. Next slide, please. And this is our Unido Firo Gari fryer that was constructed with Unido and Firo. That was done in, I think, in the 70s, a long time ago. We're trying to resuscitate it. At the moment, it's not working. Then we have our cabinet dryer. You can see that there. Next slide, please. Then our agro waste dryer. You know, definitely there's a lot of waste from the peels. We dry them. We use some of it for mushroom production, for mushroom growing, for spawn production, and also we also have it for animal feed, whatever it is you want to use it. So again, you're welcome to Firo to see some of these equipment and see how you can go and set up yours. That's the hammer mill for wet milling, and then we have the hammer wheel for dry milling. Next slide, please. And this is our motorized hydraulic press. The other one I showed you, that was the manual one. This is the motorized hydraulic press. And then this is our fufu pulping machine. Next. Can you just go back a little? Just go back a slide. That's the other. Continue. Yes, then this is our, we call it the Mokapi. This was a work which was done with IITA. So you have, you know, we talked about the unit process lines. Now we have it in this vehicle, all the unit process lines, up till the stage of packaging. It is called the Mobile Cassava Processing Innovation. And this can be carried around the small holder farmers. And like Sultry was talking about 10 kilometers, maybe this is something that could, yeah, and then with this, that Sultry could also use. And this work was also with GIZ. This work was done. And it's a wonderful innovation that is being sold out to everyone. You can always still come to Firo and give you more information. Next slide, please. So we have some other current innovation work that we are carrying out. We have one with Firo being there, IITA, and Colombia. And there is a development of an energy efficient flash dryers. We know we find so many flash dryers all around. And that was what brought about this innovation, to make sure that we can have an energy efficient flash dryer. Next, please. Another innovative project is the one of rural industrialization via energy technologies. And this, we're partnering with Pyrogency and then Women in Engineering, also partnering with them. And the project is about detailed designing and integration so that we can have it. It has a novel steam-powered frying system and a waste biomass, which makes it beautiful, because a lot of times we always have one problem or the other with waste. But this project is going to take care of getting your product and also taking care of the waste biomass, which is usually a problem when you're talking about cassava processing. Next slide. So here we have a cassava compact truck. This one also, I believe Sultry could partake of it. Yes, Sultry should be able to be part of this, key into this. It would be nice for them. So it's a collaboration between IITA and TABT. Next slide, please. So we have some collaborators. We have Nikapna, we have Amefan, we have Iksan, we have GIZ, which was part of the Mokapi. Then we have, we've done quite a lot. Cassava has been very, very supportive. And then we have the large-scale cassava manufacturers and factories. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, FIRO, through R&D, has been able to process a lot of cassava products for new products, cassava, cereals, mention it for upgrading them. Like I said earlier, we have that of the kunu, we have that of palm wine, just to mention a few, and the ogi, we have our soy ogi, which is premium too. And then we also have developed a lot of equipment for MSMEs. And also, we also foster relationship with all these other collaborators, like I mentioned earlier. And then FIRO usually holds an annual fabrication workshop, although we can't hold one this year because of COVID. So, but for next year, by God's grace, we intend to do one. And in this case, fabricators come to showcase some of the technologies they have learned from FIRO. They come to showcase the equipment, and sometimes they bring new ones. And also, to round it up, they come and they brainstorm with some of our engineers also. Next slide, and I'd like to say a very big thank you for this opportunity. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much indeed, ma'am. Thank you. Again, that was Dr. Agnes Yensi-Asagwa, the Director General at FIRO, which is the Federal Institute of Industrial Research, Oshodi. And honestly, I don't know, I'm sure a number of people, in terms of pride and the amount of work that have gone in at FIRO with regards to research and development, and in terms of agriculture and cassava production in particular, is highly commended. I look forward to hopefully visiting the site and seeing some of the innovations that those people who are interested in going through this line of farming can access. On that note, we conclude the presenters for today. A big thank you once again. Without no particular order, Dr. Richard Okechukwu, Mr. Kai Kutan, represented by Mrs. Lolo Gustadapa, Mrs. Yensi Roloye, and also Dr. Agnes Yensi-Asagwa, not the keynote speaker, Professor Latif Sirleaf. I do understand that we have a number of questions that have come through. And I also thank the speakers who have responded already to some of these questions. Because of our time, as we did project to end today's meeting at 1 p.m., unfortunately, we have not been able to finish at the time we planned to. What we will do is that we will be unable to take questions and answers live. However, we will be sending a communique to all registered participants, and we would reach out to all the speakers to respond to your specific questions. So take note of those questions and ensure that it's enclosed in the communication, sent out to all registered participants. So please do look out for your specific question. I'd also like to please ask and crave the indulgence of all the speakers to kindly go to the Q&A section, and if there's any question addressed to you specifically, if there's any way you can respond to them through the chat option, we'll be most grateful. Thank you very much indeed. We're really grateful for your time. It's been such an informative session and such a time well spent this afternoon. I'd like to now make very welcome to give a wrap up on today's sessions, the communique and recommendations. The Executive Secretary at the Impact Business Group, also the Chief Executive Officer, in the person of Mr. Oluwole. We begin the communique. We have just a few more things to get through before we close. After Mr. Josuma, I'd like to invite again the chairperson to give some closing comments, just comment on today's event. After we will take a vote of thanks from the Vice Chair of the Impact Business Group, and then we'll end today's webinar. A big thank you again for your patience and kindness. I'd like to crave again the indulgence of our panelists to kindly visit the Q&A section beneath and see if there's any way they can respond directly to some of the questions and concerns highlighted. I'll ask Mr. Dusman to kindly share his information and to give a communique and recommendations.
Good afternoon, all participants. Firstly, our able chairman, Dr. Mrs. Nike Akadem, Chief Mrs. Eniola Fadayomi, MFR, Vice Chairman, His Royal Highness Dr. Abiola Dosunmu, Foundation member and a director of MBN, and all other MBJ director participating. I also wish to thank all participants for gracing the occasion. My name is Dosunmu Oluwole, Executive Secretary, stroke CEO, NEPA Business Group Nigeria. I'm here to present the wrap-up and the communique and recommendation from this webinar. The communique and recommendation is the summary of all conversation at this webinar. It is, however, not the final document, as input from participants in form of questions and answers will as well be considered before the final version is agreed upon and shared with participants through their registration details. We equally wish to assure that the recommendation will be shared with relevant authorities and institutions for quick realization of desired development of the cassava value chain for socioeconomic growth. The communique and the recommendation are presented below. Cassava, apart from being consumed locally, serves as important raw material to processing companies with different derivatives. Nigeria still remains the largest producer of cassava with 59 million tons, 24% world share per annum. The cassava value chain in Nigeria is largely weak, highly fragmented, and dominated by very small scale players. The cassava value chain, Nigeria is yet to fully embrace industrial utilization of cassava as obtainable in countries that produce far less than Nigeria, such as Thailand, Brazil, and Colombia. Cassava is therefore a major crop that can bring desired jobs for the teeming youth and unemployed. Cassava equally remains an important avenue to source for the needed revenue in the face of drop in oil revenue due to the new reality in the world. Effective public-private partnership is essential for desired industrial utilization of cassava. Another point, there are a lot of products that have been developed and patented by research institutes such as FIRO that are waiting for partnership and collaboration with private sector for commercialization. ADGOA program is the most efficient scheme that can ensure adequate and quality raw material to processing companies. Lack of regulated prices affect industrialization of cassava. Challenges to cassava production include destruction of farmland by cattle herdsmen and other insecurity issues. Weed management is the major cause of low yield in the country. Mechanization at the farm level as the only way to reduce production costs and consequent enhanced productivity. Agricultural value chain financing, AVCF, is the best way for agribusiness financing in developing countries. AVCF is an holistic tool that meets the need of chain network for finance, to secure sales, to buy inputs, or to produce and improve efficiency. The African Continental Free Trade Area, which takes off in January 2021, provides opportunities for Nigeria to increase cassava production for exportation of cassava products into other African countries. Consistent and good policy environment are critical to cassava production and utilization. Right farm technologies and methods as panacea to improve productivity. Then lastly, there is need to continuously improve on the agricultural rural extension services for adequate and effective dissemination of information to the rural and smallholders farmers that account for over 90% of the production. Such information may be on right methods and technology and practices, available loans and support, as well as available markets. Thank you for participating.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Dosumu Olwole, Executive Secretary at the PAD Business Group with an office in Victoria Island, and who's worked tirelessly to ensure the success of today's webinar. And I must give kudos to you and to your team for doing such a brilliant job of putting these distinguished speakers together and the content of today's demonstration. Thank you very much. Having done that, I'd like to make again very welcome the chairperson for the PAD Business Group in Nigeria, Chief Dr. Mrs. Onikepo Akande, and to give a comment with regards to today's deliberations, following which we'll invite the Vice Chair to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, the moderator. I have to commend the lead speaker, the panelists, and everybody who has participated at this conference. It has been most successful, very educative, very informative. Let me start with the lead speaker, Professor Lateef Soni. You gave a brilliant presentation and useful information. I didn't know that 80% of sanitizer is from ethanol. This is good information for me. You also said that there should be credit facilities for SMEs and technical support. I cannot agree more with you. And Dr. Richardson Okechukwu, another very brilliant presentation. You said to reduce the cost of production, mechanization at the farm level. I agree with you. Mrs. Oluyemi Ironuye, another good presentation. You're sharing your experience with us and training and all the wonderful things that you do in your organization. Well done. Well done with the good work. And then our own Mrs. Ruth Kadafa, representing my brother, Mr. Kayode Pito of Bank of Industry. That is an institution that I belong. I was a member, a director of NIDB before it became Bank of Industry. And when I became the Minister of Industry, I was supervising Bank of Industry. Madam, well done. Beautiful presentation. You mentioned financing because most people, their problem is how to access financing. Thank you very much. And Mrs. Agnes Jemisi Agba of Firu, very, very educative. You mentioned various things that I didn't know could be produced from cassava, like noodles that my grandchildren love to eat, tapioca that I also love to eat. You gave us various machines that can produce these goods. Very, very educative. I thank you very much for this. And before I stop, I cannot forget some of my friends who have been very supportive. The publisher of Business Day, Mr. Frank Aigoku, he has been very supportive. If you open this page 16 of the Business Day of today, you will see the publication there. I thank him very much. And then in-house, my people, the Vice President, Mrs. Eniola Fadayomi, well done. We are still going to hear your vote of thanks anyway. I'm not giving vote of thanks, I'm just reacting to some of the things that happened. And Her Royal Highness, my friend, my very intelligent friend, my friend Erelu herself, she's always supportive of this NEPAD. And also, we have various board members that I saw from the screen. We have the former past president of ICANN and our own Mrs. Agnes, also of ICANN. Then our own Mr. Dosumu, who has been working round the clock to make sure that today is a success. To me, it has been very successful, very educative, very informative, and I'm sure when we send the papers around to all the participants, they will know a lot of work that has gone into it. And our dear lady, the moderator, my young friend, Mrs. Ayo Miro Eze, well done. You have moderated the program very well. Thank you very much, everybody. So, moderator, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Such a wonderful way to summarize today's deliberations. You've broken down each part, and I'm sure if anyone came in at the end of today's deliberations, they will have been able to pick up what we have discussed today from your summary. Indeed, very, very big thank you to you, ma'am. Chief Dr. Mrs. Niseko Akon, a worthy chairperson for the NEPAD Business Group Nigeria. And even though you acknowledge everyone, I'm sure we still here for the vice chair to really appreciate you and thank such a woman of substance indeed. Now, going on to the vote of thanks, at this point, I'd like to invite she's been with us right from the beginning till now, the indefatigable vice chair of the NEPAD Business Group. I must say at this point that I'm proud to be female at this point, in this generation. We have a female chairperson, we have a female vice chairperson, we had a female presenter representing Surgery International, and of course a female moderator. And so I'm going to hand over to the vice chair of the NEPAD Business Group, promoting women in industries and in workplace, in the person of Chief Mrs. Eniola Fadayomi, MFR. At that time, I please kindly unmute your mic. I'll send a request to you.
Okay. Yes, I hope you can hear. Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much once again. I have to start by thanking my chairman, my dear chairman. And I think she has conveyed the sentiments not only of myself, of the entire board of NEPAD Business Group entirely. And all the comments she has made really apply from the very heart, not only of herself, but for the whole board. And I don't think there's anything that I can say that can really add so much significantly to it, other than to associate all of us very closely with each and every recognition that has been made. One last recognition that she did not touch on is the recognition of herself. As a very humble person, I know that she would not mention all the hard work she has been putting into this. I know and I'm aware that for the last 2-3 days, she has been doing nothing but ensuring that all technical issues have been put in place. All those who need to be contacted to ensure their presence and attendance have been contacted, and to ensure that this webinar goes on as smoothly as it did. So I want to thank her for the continuous leadership she has shown and unwavering support she has given to all the whole board, the entire board, and to the Secretariat. And also, of course, to thank the Secretariat. We know all the little bits and pieces that they have been putting together to ensure that we on the board too would be able to do our own. I want to thank the, my phone. I want to thank Mr. Dosumu, our Chief Executive Officer, for the hard work that he has put into it. And I want to thank all the attendees and our panelists personally. We really appreciate the work that you have done. We appreciate all the effort that have been put into it. And I believe many people are already asking whether they would be able to get, papers for this webinar, and as well as a repeat. I think the Secretariat has already seen to it that papers will be distributed and a repeat of this webinar can be made available to all those who are interested. Once again, thank you very much, and God bless you all for being with us. And we look forward to the next webinar that we are going to have. As you're aware, this is not the first time we have had a special seminar on cassava, and we intend to be with all of you all the way. Thank you very much. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Really grateful indeed for the vote of thanks. And so, Mrs. Chair, the Vice Chairman, members of the board of the NEPAD Business Group in Nigeria, panelists, all registered participants, this is where we close the curtains on today's webinar. I must say thank you very much, and as Chief Mrs. Father Yemepal has said, please expect our communication. We will be communicating with you, letting you know next steps, dates of next seminars and meetings, and very importantly, information from today's webinar. For everyone who's registered, we have the
Let me make one comment, please. Yes, I forgot to acknowledge the technical support from the team of Imagine Africa Capital Group, as ably led by Mrs. Toyin Sonny. I am chairman of Imagine Africa Group. The group has been very helpful in organizing this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I think that was really critical. That was important. We couldn't have done this without their support. They have offered invaluable support. Damilola and the entire team. Thank you so much indeed. All right, we have your email addresses. You will hear from the Secretariat very shortly. We'll send papers to you from all our speakers for today. Have a beautiful day and a beautiful week, and we look forward to implementing the recommendations from today's deliberations. very importantly, as we embrace the new normal, we will not be held down. We will continue to push forward and work even at this time. I'm Ayo Myra saying thank you so much. Have a lovely day.